Okay, going through the 7-3 worksheet, starting with number 1 here. We are supposed to give 3 responses here. First of all, in quadrant 1, remember both signs of sine and cosine are positive, so I'm going to mark that here, plus plus. Also, before we need to go on, we need to figure out what will the cosine of x be if I know the sine ratio. And again, using Pythagorean triple work, this is going to be 12 over 13. And then the tangent of this particular angle is going to be 5 over 12 using sine over cosine. So we're going to use this fact, and this fact with these next parts of this problem here. Okay, now moving on here. So now, first of all, to find the sine of 2x, I'm going to use the formula 2 times the sine of x times the cosine of x. Okay, and that will equal, we get 50. Oh, wait a minute, this is a 12 here. So we're going to get 120 over 169, and we are done with that one. Okay, to go ahead and do the cosine of 2x, there's 3 possible formulas for that. I'm just going to choose the cosine squared minus sine squared. So cosine squared is going to be 12/13 squared minus 5/13 squared. And that's going to equal 144, 25, common denominator is 169, so I get 119 over 169. And that one's done. And then the tangent is going to be of 2x is going to be 2 times my tangent over 1 minus the tangent value squared. So in the top here, the 2 and the 12 reduced, I get 5 over 6. And the bottom, I'm going to get 144, so I get 144 over 144 for 1, minus 25 over 144 here, which gives me 119 over 44 on the bottom, and sorry about that, which equals 5, 6 times the reciprocal of 144 and 119, and that's going to give me is 120 over 119. Okay, and we could have gotten that probably from these two here as well. Okay. I got a dog laying on my cord here. Okay. Moving on to number 2. Let's change here to purple. And again, the first thing here, if cosecant is negative, that means sine is going to be negative. And again, looking at this, that means that the sine of x, Pythagorean triples, will be that. It also means the tangent of x is going to be 3 over 4. So again, these are all required, and now we do the same thing we just did. So we're going to stick the sine of 2x is going to equal 2 times 3/5 times 4/5, which comes out to be 24/25, but it's negative because the sign is negative here. The cosine, again, I'm going to use the squared version, equals cosine x squared. I'm going to jump right into squaring it on the fly. Likewise here, the sign will be negative, so I still am going to get 9/25, so I get 7/25 for that. And then the tangent 2x is going to be 2 times my tangent, and then 1 minus my tangent squared, which is 9/16. I'm going to change this to 16/16. So these reduce to 2, so I get 3/2 divided by 7/16. 3/2 times the reciprocal gives me, that doesn't quite look right here. This is negative because this is negative. 16. Oh, this is 3/2. That's equals negative 24/7. Okay, moving on. Kind of similarly here, quadrant 3, they're both negative, but tangent's positive here. So again, I'm going to say that the cosine of x is going to be -4/3 Pythagorean tripling, and then the tangent of x is going to be 3/4 positive. So again, like we just did here, we're just going to kind of follow that same path here. So sine of 2x equals 2 times -3/5 times -4/5, which is positive 24/25. The cosine, again, I'm going to use the squared version, so I'm going to square cosine, which is 16/25 minus 9/25 equals 7/25. And then the tangent of 2x is going to be 2 times by tangent, which is 3/4, over 1 minus 3/4 squared, which is 9/16. 16/16. These cancel to 2, so I get 3/2 times the reciprocal, 16/7. So again, we get 24/7. So some repetition there. Moving on here to number 4. Now this one, cosine is positive, but tangent's negative, so my sine has to be negative. Also, if we're taking a look here at this, we have a angle here using the cosine ratio here. So this hypotenuse is going to be 3 squared plus 1 squared. So we get the square root of 10. So now that means that my sine of x is going to be opposite over hypotenuse, and my cosine of x is going to be the adjacent over hypotenuse, where this is negative due to the fact that we had this up here. So now we're kind of ready to go. Again, some preliminary work required. So now the sine of 2x is going to be 2 times the sine value times the cosine value. In the top, I'm going to get -6. In the bottom, I'm going to get root 10 times root 10 is just 10, integer, and I'm going to get -3/5. Cosine of 2x, again, I'm going to use the squared version. If I square my cosine, I get that. If I square my sine, I get that. So I get 8/10, which comes out to be 4/5. Okay. And then again, my tangent of that should just be, I can take my previous two answers here. So I'm going to take this over this, cancel the divide by 5s, and I get -3/4. So that's kind of a slick way to do that. Using the lowering of powers to rewrite this, this will go a little bit quicker than the last few. So again, I can think of this as sine squared x overall squared. I do have a formula for the lowering of powers here. I'm picking this one because it might be the only one there. Okay. And so now I'm going to simplify this fraction. I get 1/2, and I get cosine x still all squared. So now I got to FOIL this out. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. And then 2 times 1/2 times negative cosine is negative cosine. And then negative cosine times negative cosine is positive cosine squared x. Alrighty. So now with this one here, they want us to reduce this one again. So I'm going to get the 1/4. I'm going to get minus cosine x. Okay. And now I have to do what I just did here. And I don't have my card with me here, so can I pause this? I don't know if it's pausing. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. In this case, with this, gives me a fraction, but it's 1 plus 2 cosine x over 2. And we are now almost done because I can simplify. I get 1/4 cosine x plus, if I divide this out, I get 1/2. If I divide this out, I get cosine x. So it looks like I get 3/4. And these cosines cancel. So I get that. Interesting. Moving on here, half angle formulas here. Again, I'm going to think of 15 as half of 30. So really, that's going to equal that. So now I can say using that, I'm going to get plus or minus. And again, we're going to go ahead 15 degrees. Half of that's got to be positive, so I don't need the plus or minus. And now I'm going to get 1 minus cosine of, oh boy, that's the worst 30 I think I've written in my life. 30 degrees equals and cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2, which gives me 1/2 of 1 minus root 3 over 2. I'm going to think of this as 2 over 2. So that's going to give me, I'm going to take out another divide by 1/2 out, so it gives me 1/4. It gives me 2 minus root 3. And since I've got a factor of 1/4, I can square root that out. So I get 1/2, because the square root of 1/4 is 1/2. And then we have 2 minus root 3. That's the type of answer they want here. So now here, this one, we're going to write as tangent of 45 over 2 degrees. Tangent has a couple of options here. I like this one, so I'm going to say 1 minus cosine of 45 over sine of 45. It just gives me one denominator, which equals 1 divided by the square root of 2 over 2, because that's the cosine of 45. Square root of 2 over 2. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide by that fractional denominator. And so that means 2 on top, root 2 on the bottom. Distribute. I'm going to get 2 over root 2 minus 1. And now to rationalize that fraction there, I got to multiply by root 2, multiply by root 2. So my final answer is going to be 2 root 2 over 2 minus 1, but these cancel, so that gives me root 2 minus integer 1. Okay. Continuing here with these half angles, again I'm going to think of this one as cosine of 330 degrees over 2. And again, remember 330 degrees is like right here. So again, I'm going to use I'm in that quadrant. I want cosine. Half a cosine is going to take me back to here, so that's going to be a negative version. And again, like a couple problems ago, I'm going to go 1 plus. Oh, yep, I'm going to go 1 plus this time. And that's going to be root 3 over 2, all divided by 2. And then the same procedure. I'm going to take the 1/2. Instead of dividing by 2, I'm going to write that as 2 over 2, root 3 over 2. I'm going to divide out another 1/2, so that's going to give me half of a half. So I'm going to get 2 minus root, or no, 2 plus, excuse me, root 3. And again, minus sign out front, so minus 1/2 here. And then I'm going to get the square root of 2 plus root 3. Here, this next one here deals with pi units, radians. So I'm going to write this as pi over 4 divided by 2, so a little bit gnarly looking fraction with a fraction in the numerator. And again, like before, I'm going to go ahead here, and it's simply going to be 1 minus the cosine of my pi over 4 divided by sine of pi over 4, which gives me 1 minus root 2 over 2 over root 2 over 2. And again, like before, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to distribute. And that's going to give me 2 root 2 minus 1. Do some rationalizing here. Multiply by root 2, multiply by root 2. That gives me 2 root 2 over 4 minus 1. Do you simplify? Oh, this is just 2, not 4. So I get root 2 minus 1 for my final answer. Again, a couple more here to go, then we get to some easier ones here. Now here we get cosine of pi over 6 divided by 2 gives me pi over 12. And again, we're doing cosine. We're going to be in the positive realm, so instead of plus or minus, it's just going to be positive. So it's going to be 1 plus cosine of pi over 6 over 2. Again, the same methodology here. I'm going to take the 1/2. I'm going to get 2 over 2 instead of 1, plus pi over 6 is going to be 30 degrees, so that's me root 3 over 2. But a plus this time. Again, I'm going to divide out another half, so half of a half is 1/4. I'm going to get 1 plus root 3. And the square root of 1/4 is 1/2. 1 plus, oh, this is a 2. This is a 2. Root 3. Excuse me. Finally, this one here, I'm going to rewrite this as 9 pi over 4 divided by 2. One thing here, that 9 pi over 4 is actually the same as pi over 4 because we're going around the unit circle. 4 pi over 4, another 4 pi over 4, plus another 4 pi over 4. So basically, we're going to go ahead here. Instead of looking at this, this is going to replace it here. So that's going to equal the sine formula here. It's going to be positive, and we're going to be using 1 minus cosine of pi over 4 over 2. And like we've done like 3 or 4 other times, we're going to take out the 1/2, make this 2 over 2 minus cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. And we're going to take out another 1/2. So we get 2 minus root 2. And we're going to square root that 1/4 to give me 1/2 outside. And then we're going to have in the radical 2 minus root 2. Okay, last ones here. What we're doing is just trying to identify whether we're talking sine, cosine, or tangent. When I have 2 sine, cosine, that's going to be sine, and I'm going to double the angle. Okay, because we're using the angle, the 2x formula here. Same thing here, so this would be sine double the angle. Over here, this is an example of cosine double angle formula. So cosine double. Again, cosine double. This is tangent, so I'm going to say tangent and double 8 to get 16 degrees. Again, this is another form of the tangent. Remember, there's 3 options for double angle for tangent here, so I'm going to double. And there we go. Hopefully this helps you out.